This is the second part of the Tosfot on Brachot daf bet Amar Aleph, Tibur Manchil Maeimatai. Tosfot started off by quoting Rashi. Rashi thinks that the main mitzvah of Kriyat Shema is typically fulfilled with Kriyat Shema Lamita, and the Shema in Shul is not really the mitzvah of Shema because we generally say it too early. And Tosfot attacked Rashi with 4 questions, and when there are a lot of questions, it's likely that some of them have answers, and that's why there's so many questions. So it's important to think about how Tosfot would respond to, how Rashi would respond to Tosfot's question. In any event, Tosfot offers an alternative, and Tosfot, we began this in the previous video. Tosfot says, "L'chein piresh Rabbeinu Tam," that because of all these problems, Rabbeinu Tam explains, "Da'adrabba," that it's just the opposite. Kriyat Shema shel Beit HaKnesset Ikar. The Kriyat Shema in Shul, even though Tosfot also had the custom of davening Ma'ariv early, before Tzedek Kochavim, still the mitzvah of Shema is fulfilled in Beit Knesset. V'im Tomar, and if you'll ask, Hayach anu korin kol kach miba'od yom, how could we fulfill the mitzvah so early? In contradiction to the Mishnah, where the only view is that Shema begins at Tzedek Kochavim. V'yesh lomar, Tosfot answers, D'kai malon k'Rab Yehuda, D'amar beperek Tfilat HaShachar, Zman Tfilat HaMincha ad Plag HaMincha. Tosfot answers that we paskin like Rav Yehuda, who says that the cutoff between Mincha and Ma'ariv is Plag HaMincha, Dehainu echad asar sha'os pachot revia, which is 11 hours minus a quarter, 1 1/4 hours before sunset. Umiyad k'sheyichle zman mincha matchil zman arvit. If Rabbi Yehuda thinks that mincha ends at Plag HaMincha, that means that arvit starts at Plag HaMincha. And if arvit starts at Plag HaMincha, then Kriyat Shema also starts at Plag HaMincha. And therefore, Rabbeinu Tam believes that you can fulfill the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema, of B'shach B'cha, as early as Plag HaMincha. Plag HaMincha is a time which is, as I mentioned, 1 1/4 hours, Sha'ot Zmaniot, 1 1/4 hours before sunset. And Tosfot quotes Rav Yehuda. Who's Rav Yehuda? How does that play into here? Doesn't our Mishnah alone address the issue of Zman Kriyat Shema and say universally that the time is Tzedek Kochavim? Where is Tosfot digging up Rav Yehuda? Let's look at for a moment where Rav Yehuda comes from. Rav Yehuda is in the first Mishnah of the 4th parak of Brachot daf Chavav Amud Aleph, and here the Mishnah is describing the times of Shachrit, Mincha, and Ma'ariv. Tfilat Shachar ad Chatzot, Rav Yehuda Omer ad Dalat Sha'ot. Tfilat HaMincha ad HaErev, Rav Yehuda Omer ad Plag HaMincha. Tfilat HaErev ein lakeva, etc. So here we have a debate about the end time for Mincha, and Tosfot thinks that extends to also the beginning time for Ma'ariv. Now, on the surface, you would say that how does this Mishnah compare to our Mishnah on Daf Bet, Perak Aleph Mishnah Aleph? On the surface, you would say that they're 2 completely separate issues. That the 4th parak is discussing the laws of Tefillah and the Zman of Tefillah, and Rabbi Yehuda thinks that Mincha, Tefillah Mincha has to be until Plag HaMincha, and maybe Ma'ariv can start after Plag HaMincha. But the time for Kriyat Shema is a completely separate issue. The time for Kriyat Shema is discussed on Daf Bet, in the Mishnah, Perak Aleph Mishnah Aleph, and there is Tzedek Kochavim. Nevertheless, Tosfot assumes that these 2 issues are identical, that the Zman for Shachrit has to be identical to the Zman for Kriyat Shema. Or, the Zman for Tfilat Arvit is the same as the Zman for Kriyat Shema Shalayla. Why does Tosfot think that? Possibly because of Smichat Gdula Tfilah, he sees these 2 mitzvot as one and the same, as linked together. And therefore, whenever the Zman for Arvit is, the Zman for Kriyat Shema is. So therefore, Tosfot understands that Perak Daled Mishnah Aleph is actually a continuation of the same discussion as Perak Aleph Mishnah Aleph, and they're both discussing the same issue, the time for Ma'ariv, be it Shema or Tefillah. The fact that one Mishnah quotes Shema and one Mishnah quotes Tefillah is really irrelevant. It's both the same issue. And even though the Mishnah and Daf Bet Amud Aleph says the time is Tzedek Chavim, we don't necessarily paskin like our Mishnah. We actually paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. The Kaimalan Rabbi Yehuda. The Amar Perak Tfilah Shachar Zman Tfilah Mincha Ad Plag Mincha. V'im Tomar, and therefore Tosfot now asks, Heyach anu mitpalalim Tfilah Mincha Samach L'Chashecha. V'afilu la'achar Plag Mincha. If we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, we have a problem. How do we daven Mincha ever after Plag Mincha? I'm not sure if he means the same day or on a different day, but Tosfot says the practice is to daven Mincha even after Plag Mincha, right up until sunset. So how can we do that if we follow Rabbi Yehuda? Yesh Lomar, Tosfot answers, T'kaimalon k'Rabbanan ta'amri zman tfilah mincha ad ha'erev. We also paskin like Chachamim on Daf Chaf Vav, who say that zman tfilah mincha is until sunset or nightfall. Ve'amrin on the kaman, and how can we paskin like two people? Because the Gemara does it on Chav Zayin. In the discussion of that Mishnah, the Gemara concludes, Hashta de lo itmar hilchata, lo kamar v'lo kamar. The Talmud says we don't have any conclusion. We try to prove one way or the other, but we don't know who to paskin like Rabbi Yehuda Chachamim. Therefore, the Gemara concludes, the avad kamar, avad, if you follow mar, one master, avad, what you did was fine. The avad kamar, if you follow the other master, avad, that's also fine. You can pick and choose either opinion. They're both considered legitimate. So Tosfot says we can do that for Shema also, and do Mariv, Shmona Esrei for Mariv, Kriyat Shema Shal Mariv, Brachot Kriyat Shema Shal Mariv, all of it after Plag Mincha, even though sometimes we'll follow Chachamim, because we can be lenient in this way. This is the view of Rabbeinu Tam, of Tosfot. It's interesting that some Mefarshim are bothered by one thing. How could the Gemara say you can follow either opinion and be lenient either way? Many people assume that that's an application of the principle of Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula. That we have a Safek had a paskin, and Tfilah is Midrabbanan, so we can be lenient. But when it comes to Kriyat Shema, which is D'Oraita, how can we be so lenient? So it's interesting to note that it's very possible that Tosfot himself paskins like the view in the Gemara that Kriyat Shema is actually D'Rabbanan, because we know there's a debate about it in Masechet Brachot whether Kriyat Shema is D'Oraita or D'Rabbanan. Most Rishonim assume that we take the position that it's D'Rabbanan, but Tosfot in a couple of places, and here is one in Masechet Menachot, nothing to do with Masechet Brachot. Masechet Menachot is talking about tzitzit, and in the case of tzitzit, the Gemara interprets a pasuk. Uritem oto, you should see the tzitzit. Uzchartem, and you should remember them. Re'ei, we interpret re'ei mitzvah zo. See this mitzvah, the tzitzit. Uzuchor mitzvah acheret, and you'll remember another mitzvah. Hasmuchala, which is close to it. Ve'izo zo, mitzvah kalayim is one interpretation, and previously they suggested it's something else. Ezo zo kriyat shema. That is Kriyat Shema. Titnan Maeimatai Korin Shema b'Shachrit Mishayakir Ben Techela L'Lavan, because the time for Shema is linked to the colors on the tzitzit, the Techelet contrasting with the Lavan, the white and the blue strings. So the interpretation of the pasuk is to see the tzitzit and to be reminded of Shema. Tosfot jumps in, Asmachta Ba'alma. This is not really a midrash. This is just an asmachta. It's a Kriyat Shema D'Rabbanan, because Tosfot says we paskin that Kriyat Shema is actually D'Rabbanan. So very likely that Tosfot on Daf Bet that we're learning now is applying this leniency of Avad Kamar Avad to Avad Kamar Avad, because he also follows the view that Kriyat Shema is a mitzvah D'Rabbanan.